Good evening. Welcome to our 2018 Election Forum series here on WEFS and at FloridaToday.com. I'm Isadora Rangel, your host for the evening and Florida Today's engagement editor. Tonight, we're going to be meeting the candidates running for Florida House District 51, covering North Central Brevard areas including Merritt Island, Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach, Cocoa, and Rockledge. There are two Republicans running in the August 28th primary. They are Cocoa Mayor Henry Parrish, who's still not on stage with us tonight, and Tyler Soroy. The winner of that primary is going to face Democrat and former Cocoa Mayor Mike Blake in the November general election. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer my questions, as well as 1 minute for an opening and closing remark. They also get 30 seconds for a rebuttal. And just a reminder that rebuttals will not be allowed in the intro and closing sections of the forum. A reminder that our forums are a partnership between Florida Today, Eastern Florida State College, and the League of Women Voters of the Space Coast. Without further ado, let's begin our forum with our opening statements. The first one to go is Democrat Mike Blake. You have 1 minute.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Good afternoon. My name is Michael C. Blake. I'm running for the House of Representatives, District 51, born and reared in the great city of Cocoa, and I'm happy to say I've been a school teacher for over a decade. Matter of fact, almost 3 decades. I'm starting my 27th year, so I am dear and near to my students that I am very proud of. I am a 2-term mayor of the great city of Cocoa. I'm also a 2-term councilman, where I've served 8 years as a councilman of Cocoa. As a mayor, we had a lot of things accomplished, a lot of positive productivity, and I'm very proud of that. Historically speaking, I was born and reared here. I'm a tender age of 58. I'm happy to say my parents are Richard Kenneth Blake and my mother, Dr. Rosalind Blake Jones. They have been very instrumental in my life, and I'm here to serve the people of this fine area of District 51. So I would like to take your voice to Tallahassee, but I need your help. So I look forward to seeing you. I like Mike.
Thank you. And again, Henry Parrish is not here yet. We hope he can join us shortly, but we're going to move on to Tyler Soroy, who's a Republican.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank Florida Today and the League of Women Voters and Eastern Florida State for hosting this forum this evening. My name is Tyler Soroy. I'm a Republican candidate for the Florida House of Representatives. As a parent, as a Floridian, there are many challenges that we face as a state and as a community, and I believe I have a perspective to lend our Florida legislature. We need to bring vocational and technical training back into our public schools so young people are learning trades like welding, plumbing, air conditioner repair, and even basic nursing. We need to begin focusing more resources on our state's mental health system to make sure that patients and troubled youth are receiving the help that they need to avoid crisis situations in our schools and in our communities. We also need to have a concerted effort, a very serious effort, to address our failing Indian River Lagoon and to stave off the effects that it will have on our property values. I'm looking forward to the campaign ahead. I appreciate you coming out tonight, and I look forward to answering more questions.
All right, so let's move on to our first question, which should be very simple. Please give examples of proposed bills you will file or budget allocations you will seek if elected. The first one to go is Tyler.
The first piece of legislation that I'd like to file is a bill that incentivizes companies to offer apprenticeship programs for young people. I think the legislature can do that by offering tax incentives for companies that are willing to partner with their local school districts in order to create opportunities for young people to come in and to study skills like electrical work, mechanics. AJ Hires is a supporter of mine, obviously a prominent businessman and auto dealership owner here in our community. And he struggles to find qualified people to work and maintain his fleet of vehicles. A company like that would be a tremendous opportunity for a young person to come in, to learn a trade, learn a skill, and to not necessarily go on to college if they don't feel like that is the right choice for them or their family is not prepared for the expense.
Mike?
Thank you very much. The first bill I would like to acknowledge or submit will be the expansion of Medicare. And the reason why that is near and dear to me is because being an educator, a lot of my students are experiencing health issues. And as being a teacher, the academic success of our students, my students, is predicated on their advancement of education. The reason why I'm saying that is because my children must be healthy. They must have a healthy body, healthy mind. And by investing into my children in reference of their health care, because I'm at a Title I school where over 75% of my students receive free and reduced lunch. So I think it's imperative that we invest in our most prized possession. That is our children and the education of our children, but more so the health care of our children.
Thank you. So let's move on to another big issue, which is the Indian River Lagoon. If elected, what are you going to do to increase funding for lagoon cleanup? And Mike, you're going first.
Thank you. Just recently, we passed a half-cent sales tax on the investment of the Indian River Lagoon. One size does not fit all. There will be multiple strategies that we need to restore the lagoon. The reason why I'm saying that is it's imperative that we do is because I, as a child growing up in Cocoa, would go fishing 4 o'clock in the morning, believe it or not, with my reeling rod and myself and a few other chums. We would go to the Indian River to go fishing there, to catch mullet. Once upon a time, the Indian River was the trout capital of the world. A lot of people depended on the river during that time. We have a lot of books that says the project is on the bookshelf, but we have not taken that project down off the bookshelf to implement it. A couple of things I strongly believe in is oyster cultivation, replanting of the seaweed, algae, and also dredging. But we must have funding and we must have participation.
Tyler, your thoughts on the lagoon?
I think Congressman Posey said it best. The first thing that we have to do as a community is to stop putting bad stuff in the lagoon. What occurred in Titusville last week is abhorrent, dropping almost 800,000 gallons of raw sewage into the Indian River Lagoon when we expect Brevard County taxpayers to pick up the tab for the restoration of the lagoon. What I believe we need to do is a systematic approach where we begin holding municipalities accountable for not maintaining their infrastructure. We need to invest more heavily in stormwater retention to make sure that harmful substances are not flowing into the lagoon. We need to begin looking at ways to engage, and I agree with the mayor in terms of the opportunity that exists to engage school children in building oyster nets and planting mangroves and being active in the cleanup and restoration of our lagoon. It's not going to be fixed overnight. We settled along the Indian River Lagoon, I believe, in 1845. It's going to take an investment of time and energy and attention and patience to resolve this issue.
Thank you. And still on the topic of the lagoon, one of the major issues, at least in Brevard, are septic tanks. So my next question is, would you ever support a state ban on septic tanks along the lagoon, as it's being done in the Florida Keys right now with state funding, actually? Or would you ever mandate that they are inspected periodically? If not, what should the state do regarding septic tanks that pollute our waters? Tyler, you go first.
You know, as a member of the Florida legislature, prospective member, it's my job to make sure that home ownership is available, is encouraged, is accessible, that we have an economy that is strong and vibrant. And what I can't do is enact legislation that affects home ownership and slows business growth or makes it more difficult for people to buy and sell a home. I think what we have to do in terms of septic tanks really is first to identify the big culprits. And that, again, an instance like Titusville, when 800,000 gallons of raw sewage is dumped into the lagoon, I have a hard time prioritizing a homeowner's individual septic tank over the issue of a municipality dropping that kind of waste in the lagoon. I think we should get there. I think that's definitely an item on the checklist, not item number one, but maybe further along after we address the truly bad actors in terms of what is being put into our lagoon.
Mike?
Thank you. It boils down to one word: accountability. If you reside there along the Indian River Lagoon or any waterway, you should have some skin in the game. When you sell your home, if you reside along the waterway, you must have your home and your septic tank inspected. And I think it's imperative that the citizens that do reside there, and businesses included, they should have some skin in the game as they get their tank inspected maybe once every 3 to 4 years. Because if they sell their home, it must be inspected to make sure there is no seepage into the waterway. So I strongly feel that when everyone has skin in the game and take ownership and accountability of their home, then I feel that we will get the best reward of maintaining a clean environment and restoring our lagoon. Businesses and also residential individuals must get involved. and
Would
be
you ever
held
support a
accountable.
ban on septic tanks?
Ma'am, I would not support a ban. I think it's a slow process, but if there's adequate funding, I'm sure the people would want to invest. Because people, when I canvassed the Merritt Island area, Cocoa Beach, I know I'm running out of time, thank you, they talked about the water. They would not swim in that water anymore, or eat the fish from that water anymore.
Thank you.
So
So
thank you.
let's move on to another topic real quick, which is gun rights. Do you favor or oppose a ban on so-called assault-style semi-automatic weapons and high-capacity magazines for civilian use, and why? And what about universal background checks? Mike, you go first.
Thank you. I am a proponent of the Second Amendment. I do support gun rights, but also with gun rights, it requires a serious responsibility. If you own a weapon of war, I strongly feel, yes, you must have an extensive background check. You should be held accountable. You should also have, whereas you pay a fee so that you would take certain classes to make sure your weapon and your education and your mental illness will be in check. We lost something over about 1,300 kids to assault rifles and killings in public schools and private schools and throughout our community. So I'm a strong believer in being held accountable for the weapon. Can we improve and have safety controls on our weapons? Of course. We have a lot of vehicles that have a safety issue. We inspect them. We hold the automotive industry accountable. I strongly feel we should hold NRA accountable and the developers of the weapons.
Tyler?
Thank you.
No, I don't support an assault weapons ban, and I am A-rated by the NRA. But you know what we have to discuss is the elephant in the room here, and that's Parkland and the tragedy that occurred. Florida ranks 49 out of 50 states in terms of public resources devoted to mental health. Pointing at guns and saying that's the problem is the easy way out, and in terms of the liberal media, probably the most convenient way out. But the reality is that we have to make a careful, thoughtful investment in our state's mental health system. We need to give teachers and guidance counselors more resources to identify students who are suffering from bullying and social isolationism, to make sure that they're getting the services and the treatment necessary. We have to begin looking at our young people in terms of their mental health and making sure that in our schools, our teachers are trained to be able to spot students who need additional support.
Thank you. And to follow up on that, are you comfortable with the current process for obtaining a concealed weapons permit? And would you do anything to change it or make it harder or easier to get a permit, and why? Tyler, are you going first?
You know, I think that the current process is fine, although I believe that our right to self-preservation and to defend ourselves is enshrined in our Constitution, in our Second Amendment, that we have a right to defend our lives, our family, and our property. So while a concealed weapons permit certainly is a layer of checks to make sure that people are not taking advantage of the process or conducting criminal behavior, I do believe that our right to defend ourselves with lethal force if necessary is enshrined in our Constitution.
Mike?
Thank you. To obtain a weapon, let me make sure I comprehend your question correctly. There's a process. I think we should have an extensive background, ma'am, to obtain any weapon, simply because of the fact once it gets in the wrong hands or hand, we know the outcome normally. I'm a firm believer in having certain safety gun controls, because I am held accountable as a teacher for being responsible for my children's performance, my students' performance. I am held responsible for owning the weapons that I do. So I think we should do a better job in tracking our weapons, registering our weapons, and being held accountable for our weapons. And I am not in favor of having or owning a large capacity weapon.
Thank you. And still on a similar topic, let's talk about the Marjorie Stoneman High School Public Safety Act. It's over 100 pages long, as you probably know, but it does have provisions that put some gun control into law, and the law raises the age to buy a gun from 18 to 21, with some exceptions. It bans bump stocks and establishes a 3-day waiting period for firearm purchases. One of our local state representatives, Randy Fine, has vowed to repeal these portions of the law. I want to know if you would support his efforts if that's introduced, and why or why not. Mike.
I'm a supporter of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act because it takes a big step in the right direction in helping us keep our children safe. Safety is first and foremost, especially at our schools. This will prevent massive shootings, but it also will need to be fully funded. And the only way that we can address these issues is proper allocation for the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act.
But would you support repealing the gun control measures from the law?
I would want to see the in-depth of it because I think it hasn't had a chance to be on the records long enough to get the full effect of it. So I think some additional research is needed to provide a more adequate and detailed and concise information and results.
Okay. And Tyler, would you ever support repealing the portions of the law that raised the age to buy a gun from 18 to 21, ban bump stocks, and establish a 3-day waiting period for firearm purchases? Would you ever repeal that, and why?
I would support the repeal, and I would co-sponsor the legislation if I didn't sponsor it myself. What occurred in Parkland in the legislature's response was a knee-jerk reaction and an emotional decision to something that should have been more thoughtfully considered. You never make a good decision in an emotionally charged situation. So what I would have suggested had I been a member of the legislature is to continue our calendar, to finish our business, and to come back in special session after the governor and law enforcement authorities had an opportunity to complete their investigation. But again, we have to focus on the real cause, the root problem here, which is the fact that Florida ranks 49 out of 50 states in terms of public resources devoted to mental health. The Department of Children and Families, the local school district, the local sheriff's department, even the FBI allowed this individual to slip through the cracks, and a tragedy occurred as a result.
Thank you. And the law that we were just talking about also funded a Marshall program to allow some school employees to carry a gun and receive training to react to an active shooter. Do you support this program, and why? Tyler?
I do support the program. There's an expectation that when you take your children to school that they're going to be safe. And unfortunately, the nature of our society has changed, and our schools and movie theaters and churches have become soft targets that are susceptible to these kinds of attacks. I think that if a teacher is former law enforcement, retired military, or has received that training, then I would hope that they would use force, lethal force if necessary, to defend my children's lives. You know, as a parent of a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, the situation is terrifying to consider. But ultimately, that is the reality that we are confronted with in society now. And if it's not an individual who is mentally ill, we could be threatened by potentially an act of international terrorism. I'm proud to have Sheriff Ivey's endorsement in my race, and him and I share our thinking on this subject. We have to begin changing the way that we look at soft targets, and we have to encourage citizens to defend themselves if necessary.
Mike?
Thank you very much. Being an educator, I'm a strong believer in books over bullets. The state of Florida ranks number 48 in reference to 50 states in paying our teachers. And being a teacher that I am a 6'5", svelte, 320-pound individual, I really don't think a gun will make a difference, especially with me. Because just look at my demographics. If I walk out brandishing a gun, even having the proper paraphernalia on, I fit that profile. So that is one of the major reasons why I believe that we should have proper law enforcement agency members there at our campus. I don't think that responsibility should rely especially on the teachers. I think we need to increase the pay of our teachers because we rank number 48. And the thing that I would think more so than anything else is that when we have proper security on law enforcement at our school, throughout Brevard County, throughout our district, I think the students and the relationship they have with the law enforcement, the students' rapport increases, and they will have a conversation and collaboration with our law enforcement.
Thank you. And you brought up SROs. Brevard Public Schools has made it clear that we don't have enough money right now to hire an SRO for each campus. And that has been a complaint from school districts throughout Florida that the legislature did not allocate enough funds for SROs. If you are elected, are you going to fight to get more funds for SROs from the legislature? Why or why not? Mike, you go first.
Absolutely. When people have skin in the game, they feel that they're part of the system. Let's cut to the chase. You pay for what you get, and what you get, you pay for. So that means that if we do not have a proper mechanism to provide adequate funding for our schools in reference of law enforcement, then we need to look at ways to generate revenues to have that protection for our children, because they are our prized possession. And yes, when my students come to my campus, the last thing on my mind is having someone come onto the campus and create chaos. So safety first. Again, there are ways, if we look through our tax records or look through our rolls, maybe through property, maybe through an additional incentive, the money is there. It's just finding the proper way to ascertain proper funding.
Thank you. Tyler, should the legislature give more money for SROs next year?
You know, the ideal answer is yes, of course, but I think we have to look at the reality of the situation. There are so many priorities in our state: roads, healthcare, the lagoon here locally. When do we raise taxes enough? When is it enough? We have to start thinking in terms of how to address some of these problems with some creativity. And we have to work to reduce and to keep low the tax burden on our citizens. I think it would be ideal to be able to fund a school resource officer, maybe 2 or 3 officers at every school in our state of Florida. But that's not realistic. Fiscally, it's not feasible. So we have to look at alternative ways to provide that level of security. And again, a teacher with a concealed weapons permit that has received training, retired military, retired law enforcement, there is no reason why that is not a good, fiscally sound, and secure alternative to providing safety in our schools without increasing the tax burden on our citizens.
And speaking of taxes, there is a proposed constitutional amendment on the ballot in November that would require 2/3 of the vote of the legislature to increase any taxes. I want to know if you support that measure and why. And since we only have 2 people on stage, I'm going to give you a minute and a half to answer. And so hopefully Mr. Parrish will join us shortly. Tyler, you go first.
Yes, I support that legislation.
Can you explain why?
Sure. You know, I think that increasing the tax burden on our citizens is a very serious step. And the legislature should make sure that all of its due diligence is completed, that the reason is valid, that the issue has been thoroughly vetted when they take the extraordinary step of increasing taxes, particularly on homeowners. I think if you're sitting in the audience tonight or you're watching at home on television, we can all agree that property taxes are too high in our state. And it's unfortunate that property owners are the ones that are looked to when revenue is needed. What I want to do is make sure that our legislature has the backs of property owners and homeowners to make sure that when we do raise property taxes, it's done with very careful consideration and the reason is just.
Mike?
Thank you. I do not support that option, 2/3, and here's the reason why, ma'am. How often will the law change with a 2/3 majority vote? The second thing, if we continue to reduce our taxes, and I'm not saying taxes pays for everything, I'm saying to you is that if we continue to reduce, we're going to chisel away ourselves. And once you chisel away your way to generate revenue, the option of generating and revenue, then you have nothing left. And excuse me. And the reason why I'm saying that is with 2/3 being involved there to change the law in reference of raising taxes is not the answer. And it's a difficult process. It's just like the city of Cocoa. It takes 4/5 of council to remove a city manager. But the city manager is not elected by the people. They're elected by the council. So that is the reason why I'm saying I would not be in favor of that. I think we should have the right to make that decision. That burden should lie on the citizens of the state of Florida.
Thank you. I want to talk about economic incentives since we're on the Space Coast and we heavily rely on those. As you probably remember, a couple of years ago, there was a huge fight between Governor Scott and Speaker Richard Corcoran over economic incentives in Enterprise, Florida. The governor obviously wanted a boost for incentives and the speaker was against them. I want to know your views on economic incentives, and we're talking about tax breaks and cash incentives for Florida, for companies to move to Florida and hopefully to the Space Coast. Mike, your thoughts on economic incentives?
I think any business' greatest reward is to invest in the employees of that company. I think this area should be the Silicon Valley of the East. We do provide a way to give incentives to businesses that come to our area. And if they stay for a length of period of time, I think, and decide to relocate, I strongly feel that one of the departing requests or criteria should be that they have a tutorial program for individuals that would need additional training if their business moves and relocates to a different region. Now, coming back here, if I give you an incentive to come to my area, to District 51, I think it's a great investment. Prime example, what took place in the city of Cocoa. Super Walmart and its distribution is there. The citizens of this area would have an opportunity to have gainful employment, which will provide a way of life for their family, a safe, secure culture for their family, an area where you can stay, sleep, pray, and work all in your area. So I'm a firm believer in having incentives for businesses.
Thank you. Tyler, your thoughts on economic incentives?
Well, one final point on the subject of property taxes. I do think that it is important for the legislature to make sure that all citizens are paying their taxes. If you are assessed property taxes, it is your civic duty to pay them, and that is part of the problem of revenue in our state. On the issue of economic development, there perhaps is no greater poster child for the reasons of having these kinds of programs than Brevard County. When we saw the end of the shuttle program a few years ago, there was fears that it would be like the end of the Apollo program all over again. I worked in a capacity with the Regional Aerospace Workforce Initiative and Florida High Tech Corridor Council to try to find new jobs for our existing aerospace workforce to move into in other areas in our region. One of the aspects that was absolutely critical to that effort was the efforts of our local EDC and the governor to be able to use a quick action closing fund to attract and retain business here in our state. So those kinds of tools are absolutely critical, but I only support them when they have a clawback provision. If a company is not performing, then the legislature and the authorities participating must defend the taxpayers and pull back those incentives.
Thank you. So let's move on to a different topic. Do you support a law passed this year to decertify teacher unions that fall under 50% membership, and why? And do you support unions throughout all sectors of our economy? Tyler, you're going first.
Yes, I would have supported the legislation that would, frankly, I don't think that the teachers union is helping. I don't think that they are there putting the issues, the concerns, the needs of our students first. And I know that there are some that may disagree with me. And I don't say that without recognizing the fact that we need to pay our teachers more. But I think that we need to focus on our efforts to improve the quality of education that our students are receiving. And that's why I think removing the pressure of college is so important. Our schools have become places where students are told that you're not successful if you don't go on to college. Our teachers are forced to teach a curriculum in order to help kids go to college and pass tests. We need to change that narrative and say it's not as much about college as it is about contribution. Find what you're passionate about, be it welding, plumbing, electrical work, or going to college and receiving a professional degree, and allow our teachers to teach and our legislature to be there to support them in their work.
Mike?
I am a product of a union. I've actively been involved with BFT, Brevard Federation of Teachers, for 27 years, and prior to that, I was involved with our union on General Dynamics. I think the union does a phenomenal job because it protects your rights. It is part of the collective bargaining. I feel offended when someone here states that they will not support the union, and you're entitled to that, and I respect that, but I do not like that. The union has been a way to protect your rights to earn a fair wage for a hard day's work, and that union that I strongly believe in deserves it because if you don't have a union and you go to your boss and you ask for a wage increase, because it's a right to work state, he or she can fire you without cause. So if you get fired, what happens to your family? What happens to your economic security blanket? And you could be doing a phenomenal job, and your kids can be reaching their standards, meeting the state standards.
Thank you.
Okay, but you asked me as a teacher, ma'am. I'm just telling you about my greatest investment.
But your time is
respond?
up.
Can we continue on this point?
Sure, please respond. We gave him overtime, so please
You know, I
respond.
heard somebody in the audience say that the legislature has failed our teachers. I can't disagree with that. When I was a student in Brevard Public Schools, I went to Lewis Carroll Elementary, Edgewood Middle School, and Cocoa Beach High School. And I can tell you that my teachers had passion for their job. They had passion for us as students. We were able to do things that were engaging in local curriculum, learning about the Indian River, planting mangroves, doing things that were important to Floridians and important to our culture. As a legislator, I want to do more to bring back the joy of that profession. I'm asking for the trust of our teachers to allow me to engage in this issue and to make an effort to support our teachers with
Thank
better
you.
salary and more flexibility in the classroom and planning their own curriculum.
I wish some of our state legislatures
Sir,
who make that
I'm
decision
gonna
would
give
come
you-
into the
wait, I'm
classroom
gonna give you
and
30
be actively
seconds.
involved. That's what I really wish. And by God, I would do that from a
All right,
teacher perspective.
I'm gonna ask you guys to stay civil and respectful.
I am.
And
I will.
do not
Thank you.
interrupt me, since I am the host and I can cut you off
I
at any
apologize,
minute.
ma'am. I'm passionate.
So still on the topic of education, most of the education funding this year went to school security after the Parkland shooting, obviously. That left school districts with per pupil increase of 48 cents for everything else. Are you satisfied with the level of funding, and do you see ways for the legislature to ever increase that? And one of the things I'm going to put into the mix is the fact that the legislature has preempted local districts from tapping into revenues from rising property values. I want to know if you would change that and if you're comfortable with the current level of funding. And I forgot who went first the last time, but let's go with Tyler since you're the last one,
I
Mike.
think Tyler went first, did you?
I'll defer to you.
Okay,
So,
it doesn't
Mike.
matter. Chivalry still exists, sir. From the South, and by God, we're proud of it. Here I am about this, ma'am. In reference of education proper funding. Rule number one, if a line item on our budget states that it's supposed to be allocated for that particular item, then it should be allocated for that particular item, not the shell game, the three-card Marley, where I'm gonna move it horizontally and take another funding to supply something else. You get what I'm saying? So that's rule number one. If that item is dedicated and allocated for a specific situation, it should stay there. Second, again, you can only get what you invest in. If you do not properly invest in the most prized possession, which is our children, which is education, because it's a quality way of life. That is the only way you can make an honest living. There's nothing wrong with having a academic education, and there's terribly nothing wrong with having a vocational education. But you want to be able to raise your family and have a sufficient way of life and a cultural way of life so that the future generations can have the same opportunities as you do
Thank you.
as well.
Tyler?
The legislature needs to do more to respect the authority of our local elected school board. The whole concept of a local school board is that those individuals understand what is best in terms of the culture, the history, the local needs of our community. I also think that we can provide more in terms of education, particularly to our teachers in the way of funding, if we renew an emphasis on vocational and technical training. That would allow us to provide more flexibility to our teachers in terms of the curriculum that they provide. It would allow us to scale back some of the preparatory work that is done in order to achieve standardized testing. I see Pat O'Neill in the audience tonight. I know that that's something that he is passionate about as well. We have to change the culture in our schools and make it about preparing students to contribute, to be active citizens. And if you choose to go on to college to gain a professional degree, that's wonderful. But if you want to pursue a vocational technical certificate in a dual enrollment fashion, even earning a Bright Futures type scholarship to pursue a certificate in as a master welder, that opportunity should be available to students and encouraged.
Thank you. And since you brought up vocational training, I obviously know you support it, but I want to hear from both of you if Mike also supports this, but how do you increase vocational training in schools? And I want to hear specific items that you would propose in the legislature. Tyler, you're going first.
Okay. You know, what we have to do is we have to grow partnerships between our employers and our educators. Earlier, I used the example of AJ Hires. Let me now use the example of Carol Craig at Craig Technologies, a supporter of mine. We have positions on manufacturing lines where we need people who have the skills to be able to put materials together. Certainly sending humans to Mars is something that I hope that I will see in my lifetime. I know that my children will see it in theirs. Engineers, physicists, they absolutely are the ones that are going to make those plans possible. But it's folks, technicians, electricians, that will put the actual spacecraft together. So what I want to do is incentivize businesses to engage in our school districts, to be active participants in our children's education, and to offer those kinds of opportunities for young people to explore new things that they may be passionate about and to engage in those opportunities.
Thank you. Mike, do you support increasing vocational training, and how would you go about doing that?
Thank you. Yes, I do support vocational education. Currently now at Cocoa High School and throughout Brevard County, we have something similar to that. A student can take a test, a CTE test, a career training examination, where he or she can acquire a vocational skill. And also it will take cooperations with companies like Siemens or Grumman that will have a collaboration with our school board. So we're right there at the cutting edge. You can do the dual enrollment, also get it from a high school perspective, and also right here at Eastern Florida State College. Now, the way that we fund it is through those tax incentives that we give the big businesses. There again, when you invest in people, that is the greatest reward you can do, is to invest in people. Because the end result is when that individual works beyond the call of duty, goes the extra mile, because they have the support and the will of their company and know that they will provide an adequate way of life for their family.
Thank you. And still on, before we move on from education, I want to hear your thoughts about charter schools and the push from the legislature in the last 2 years to boost charter schools. For example, there was $200 million allocated 2 years ago to incentivize charter schools to move right next to struggling public schools, and school districts are also being asked to share their capital dollars with charter schools. I want to hear if you support these measures, why or why not. Mike, you're going first.
Thank you. Majority of the charter schools are earned for profit. That's the first thing. There's only a few of charter schools that maintain an adequate academic environment. The rest have failed. Over 75% of the charter schools have failed. And the charter schools that I see in our county, again, my comment goes back to, if I allocate funding for the public school, it should stay there at the taxpayers' dollars, at the taxpayers' request. The other thing I would like to ask is that the people that make that decision need to come into a classroom to see the importance of what struggles we encounter as a teacher. Because when you're sitting in that Capitol Hill in the office, you do not know what's going on in the challenging classes, the classes of the ESE, both academic aggressively advanced and those that are just challenged. It is a tough scenario when you know that your funds as a teacher and your union rights are being taken away slowly.
Your thoughts on charter schools?
I support charter schools, particularly when our local school district has failed to serve a certain population, an underserved population. In Cocoa, we have Emma Jewell. It's a charter school that serves our community. It includes an active outreach where we actually have law enforcement. Our state attorney have come in, they've served breakfast. Uniforms are provided, structure, discipline, and accountability, and it's a tremendous success story. But we can go a step further with our charter schools. One option that I'd like to see is to allow trade associations to be able to form a charter school. I'm very fortunate to have the support of a very prominent home builder here in our community. And one thing that I'd like to be able to see happen is for the home builders and contractors of Florida and the associated builders of contractors of Florida who have endorsed me to be able to come together to form a charter school that teaches young people skills in construction. No one would know that curriculum better or emerging trends in the field better than the people that are supplying those jobs.
All right, so many counties and cities in Florida prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity in at least the public sector. Would you support a state law to address discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation? If yes, do you believe it should apply to both public and private sectors? Tyler, you go first.
No, I don't support that. We have to do a couple of things. First, I think that we have to begin to trust one another again. We have to treat each other with civility and respect. But we also have to recognize that the ultimate authority on this subject is the Constitution of the United States, which provides equal protection under the law to all citizens. If we're respecting that and we're honoring that, then those kinds of laws are not necessary.
Mike?
I think the LGBTQ community should have the same rights as any other individual or citizen in this nation. Plain and simple. They should be protected just like everyone.
Thank you. That was a short one now.
Yes, indeed, because I really want to go back to that charter school, but I know you will not let me.
No, you got to
I'm
answer the
passionate
question
about that
at
charter
hand.
school, ma'am. But I will respect you.
So let's talk about healthcare a little bit. What is your plan for providing access to healthcare for Florida's low-income employees who are not making enough money to qualify for insurance under the Affordable Care Act? Mike?
Several years ago, our governor, Rick Scott, had the opportunity to receive some funding from the federal government, the expansion of Medicare, and he negated on that. He turned that money down, and that's funding that could have assisted our children, especially in reference of health care, dental care, visionary, insurance coverage, having a adequate way of life, a healthy, adequate way of life, so that they can compete with other students that have the same opportunity that do have coverage. So in essence, if a child gets sick and he or she does not have insurance or health care coverage, they suffer. And it reflects in their academic performance, their educational value. So now they're behind the 8 ball. If it was fair and equitable all the way across the board, then I would support it. But clearly it's not.
Your thoughts on expanding access to healthcare, and I'll jump in and ask you, would you ever support expanding Medicaid?
No, the legislature needs to create an environment in our state where innovation in our healthcare system is encouraged. One of the things that we've talked about during the course of this campaign is a concept known as telehealth. That's the ability of a patient to be able to reach their doctor on the phone, to receive some basic evaluation, to get a prescription renewed without having to pay for an office visit and actually go in. The legislature needs to encourage that kind of innovation and efficiency in our healthcare system. The other thing that we need to do is encourage and incentivize the development of employee healthcare clinics to allow employers or perhaps a group of employers to come together and to provide a healthcare option for their employees.
Still on the same topic, 14 seniors died after a nursing home lost power during Hurricane Irma. What control should the state have over elder care facilities? Tyler, if any.
Well, absolutely, it was tragic what occurred in those nursing homes. There absolutely should be some minimum standards in place to protect the health and safety of people who are in nursing homes in our state of Florida. But the truth is, the reality is, that is a small piece of a much bigger problem that we have in our state. Florida's population is aging, and our system of healthcare is not keeping up with the needs of our population. Throughout the course of this campaign, I've qualified by petition. I have visited over 5,800 homes in my district, and I will tell you that aging with dignity is a concern that is on people's minds. As a legislature, we need to start focusing on this issue. We need to make sure that our hospitals are investing in memory care, and we need to make every effort to enhance the quality of our healthcare services that are being provided to the elderly.
And what kind of control should the state have over nursing and assisted living facilities?
Well, absolutely, to make sure that they're able to sustain generator power in the event of a power outage. Here in Brevard County, 250,000 of our fellow citizens were without water following Hurricane Irma. We should look at some minimum standards for our nursing homes to make sure that enough water is on hand if there's some kind of crisis. But our nursing homes, we really should look at no differently than our hospitals.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike, your thoughts on nursing homes and control by the state?
Two things that are near and dear to my heart: the children, the babies, and the senior citizens. Because if you live long enough, you will become a senior citizen. And as you work throughout your entire life, you would like to have a security blanket, a safety net, especially once you become seasoned. My heart goes out to the family members that experienced that due to the hurricane this past summer and felt that, last year rather, felt that loss for their loved ones. I think if you own a business, there's certain criteria that you should provide. You should provide safety first and foremost. You should provide adequate electricity and utilities to make sure that there is a plan B, a contingency plan, that if everything else fails, you should have a contingency plan to support the individuals there.
Thank you. And we talked so much about access to health care. There was a bill in this year's session that would have allowed pharmacists to administer a flu test and also prescribe medications such as Tamiflu. That bill actually died. I'd like to know your thoughts. Would you ever support that bill if it comes back? And a reminder, we had one of the worst flu seasons this year. Mike, you're going first. Should pharmacists be allowed to have that authority to administer flu tests?
Force an individual to take the flu shot? Is that what you're saying to me?
No,
Forcibly?
give pharmacists, because today you got to go to a
A
doctor.
free flu shot? They do that now at current pharmacists now, but I think to protect the people. The purpose of the government is to protect the interests of the people and provide them with a welfare that will have a safe and wholesome environment for them. Yes, I will support a pharmacist providing adequate medical attention for individuals.
Tyler?
No, I don't. And my concern, it's not that I don't think that it's a good idea. My concern is the slippery slope that it has the potential to create. Where do we stop? If we allow a pharmacist to administer a flu test, what's next? I think that there's a reason that we entrust our doctors and our healthcare professionals, nurse practitioners with these kinds of decisions in terms of care, treatment and testing. And I think that we have to be careful in terms of eroding the value of that training and responsibility.
Thank you. And let's move on to abortion rights. Do you support abortion rights? And how will you ensure that low-income women receive information about all of their reproductive options? Tyler?
I've been endorsed by Florida Right to Life. I am proud to be pro-life. I think that that's an issue where exceptions should be made in terms of health, danger to the mother's life, incest, rape, those kinds of things. But ultimately, we need to make sure that we are respecting and honoring life, and I'm very proud to have the endorsement of Florida Right to Life in my race.
Mike, you support abortion rights?
Yes, I do. I am pro-choice. I believe that the federal government and other individuals with different beliefs have no business in determining a woman's right in reference of her reproductive health decision. I believe Roe versus Wade still stands, it's legal, and I support it.
Thank you. And move on to immigration for a little bit. There was a bill that failed this session that would have prevented local governments from passing laws that for sanctuary cities or county sanctuary policies. Would you support that bill if it comes back next year? Why or why not? Mike?
I am for sanctuary cities because sanctuary cities are a prime example of home rule. I know some people are hypocrites. Let me say this slowly but surely. It's almost like a double standard. The question need to be asked is this: should my Republican opponents make sanctuary cities different from supporting home rule? Except it's obvious. That's what I have to say.
Tyler?
I will do everything that I can as a member of our Florida legislature to support President Trump in his efforts to secure our borders. I will not support sanctuary cities in Florida in any way, shape, or form. And this is a result of the world that we live in now. We absolutely have to be able to recognize who belongs in our country and who doesn't. It is a matter of security.
And since the topic of home rule was brought up, I have another question for you. The legislature has proposed laws in recent years that curtail local government's ability to pass regulations on things such as landscaping, businesses, and vacation rentals. Do you believe the legislature should preempt home rule in some cases, or should lawmakers give local governments broad authority over local matters? And explain your position. Tyler?
I think that the legislature should rightfully have the authority to overrule local governments in this subject of home rule. Where does it end? If a city let's say a city in Brevard County, Titusville, decides to enact further restrictions on firearms in the Second Amendment, but the city down the street doesn't have the same restrictions, The role of the legislature is to provide a framework to make sure that individuals' constitutional rights are protected. Home rule is a nice concept to throw around and to apply when it's convenient on any given subject, but the reality is that it has the opportunity to be abused by local officials. Home rule should be reserved for items that are more unique to the local culture and aesthetic appeal of a community, and to allow the legislature to create uniform law in our state. Consider home rule in terms of commerce. You may have 411 different municipalities in Florida all put different ordinances in place on the way that a local business should approach a certain activity. What we have to do as a legislature is make sure that the environment exists in our state for all businesses to be able to grow, for there to be a level playing field, and for all of them to engage in commerce in our state.
Thank you. Mike, your thoughts on home rule?
I think local government should have the ability to determine their own future. Many times, our state legislatures sometimes provide certain mandates without proper funding. When that takes place, cities suffer. So the government that's closest to the people is the local government. Yes, the state legislature should abide by what the local government requests.
Thank you. And I want to hear your thoughts about this. It's texting while driving. I'm not asking you if you do that, so don't worry. But do you support making texting while driving in Florida a primary offense? A reminder that it is today a secondary offense, meaning you have to be pulled over for something else, and that would be in addition to that. But would you make that a primary offense, meaning you can get pulled over if you're caught texting and driving? Mike? Why?
This is parallel to what took place with the seatbelt law. Originally, it was a secondary. It wasn't a primary. As you can see, it progressed and went to a primary. I think while driving, texting is dangerous. If you're going to text, pull over. I mean, I've seen too many of my students, even adults, mature adults, texting while driving. Be safe. Because as you know, you can be texting, in a split second, you could be rear-ending someone. So again, accountability is part of your criteria of having the privilege to drive.
Thank you. Tyler?
I support making it a primary offense
Why?
because of the message that I think is important to send to young people in terms of being responsible in a vehicle, understanding the grave harm that can be done if you're distracted while driving, and making sure that our law enforcement have the resources and ability to protect citizens.
Thank you. We actually have 2 minutes left, so we're going to move on to our closing statements. I'm going to ask you to stick to 45 seconds so we can wrap up in time. And Tyler, you're going to go first.
Well, thank you again to our hosts for this evening. It's been a pleasure to participate in this forum. I'm very proud to be a Brevard County resident. I was born at Cape Canaveral Hospital, and I grew up on North Merritt Island. I'm incredibly proud of what we have endured together as a community, from the end of the shuttle program to the downturn of the housing market and to hurricanes in between. We have some serious challenges that we need to face. We need to revitalize our workforce by introducing vocational and technical training into our public schools. We need to lessen the tax burden on our citizens, and we need to have a collaborative effort with state and federal partners to bring more resources to bear in terms of solving our Indian River Lagoon. These issues will not be solved in the smoke-filled rooms of a Tallahassee wine bar. I am absolutely committed to pouring 110% of my passion and energy into this
Thank
job
you.
and being an effective legislator
Mike,
for Brevard County.
45 seconds. We have 1 minute
It is time
left.
for Tallahassee to listen to the people here. It is time for Tallahassee to support the everyday common people. It is time for Tallahassee to understand higher wages is needed in District 51. It is time for Tallahassee to understand equality, education, and pro-business, to protect and restore our Indian River Lagoon. I want your vote, and I will work for you, because I want you to support me. Vote I like Mike, because Mike is the voice that will
Thank
take
you.
you to Tallahassee.
And we have to wrap
Thank
up
you.
here, but thank you for watching. That's it for District 51. Stay tuned at 8 p.m. for District 52. Thank you. Coming up at 8 p.m., candidates running for Florida House District 52, covering Melbourne, Vieira, and Beachside, take the stage for a live forum. I'm Isadora Rangel from Florida Today. Join us and the League of Women Voters of the Space Coast as we press on the issues that matter the most to you.
Great careers in aviation are taking flight at Eastern Florida State College with the Aviation Maintenance Technician program at the Orlando Melbourne International Airport. The program is designed to provide highly skilled workers to companies such as Embraer, AAR, Northrop Grumman, and others that are fueling the airport's expanding commercial aviation sector. Graduates will also have job opportunities at Kennedy Space Center, as their skills are transferable to the commercial space industry. Companies such as SpaceX, Boeing, and Blue Origin are developing new spacecraft to carry astronauts to the International Space Station and beyond on missions that could begin as early as 2018. The FAA-approved program is housed at Eastern Florida's new Aviation Center. The center includes classrooms for lecture classes and a fully equipped hangar where students get hands-on training with multiple aircraft, a machine shop, testing equipment, and composite station.
Most of the other A&P schools are just bookwork. And we actually have the cool equipment, we've got the planes, we've got the engines to work on and get that experience that you can't really get anywhere else.
I've dedicated my will not only to the Air Force, but now to the civilian sector. And I hope that the people that come here understand the importance and the need that we have for aircraft maintainers.
The program consists of 2 certificates, the Aviation Airframe Mechanics PSAV and the Aviation Power Plant Mechanics PSAV. Students learn aircraft maintenance theory, diagnostic procedures, and FAA-approved methods for inspecting, servicing, and repairing aircraft and their systems. They're also taught how to use aviation industry standard tooling and equipment to perform work on actual aircraft. Graduates are qualified to take the Federal Aviation Administration exam that can lead to jobs in aircraft maintenance, repair, and refurbishment that average $55,200 annually. So don't miss your opportunity to be a part of the exciting and growing field of aviation maintenance. Visit our website for information on how to apply.
My wife is currently in the Air Force, so I decided to be a stay-at-home father.
I'm a retiree and a full-time student.
I did online classes because I was traveling and it was easy to take the classes with me.
I am graduating today with my bachelor's in business administration.
If it wasn't for the online classes, I would not be standing here today.
There shouldn't be any procrastination. Just get out there and go do it.
Join the fast-growing and rewarding field of healthcare at Eastern Florida State College's new Health Sciences Institute, where you can earn bachelor's degrees, associate's degrees, and certificates in a wide range of exciting careers, such as nursing, surgical technology, emergency care, radiography, sonography, and more. Don't delay. Contact Eastern Florida State College today.
So my super objective for this program is for students to look up in 30 years and say that their years at Eastern Florida State College in the theater department were some of the best years of their lives. They made lifelong memories, they made lifelong friends, they learned a lot, they learned about themselves, they learned about theater. That's what I hope for them, is that down the road they look up and say, those were golden years.
Coming up at 8 p.m., candidates running for Florida House District 52, covering Melbourne, Vieira, and Beachside, take the stage for a live forum. I'm Isadora Rangel from Florida Today. Join us and the League of Women Voters of the Space Coast as we press on the issues that matter the most to you. Good evening. Welcome to our 2018 Election Forum series on WEFS and at FloridaToday.com. I'm Isadora Rangel, your host for this evening and Florida Today's engagement editor. Tonight on stage, we're going to meet the candidates running for Florida House District 52, covering South Central Brevard areas including Vieira, Century, Melbourne Satellite Beach, and Melbourne Beach. There are two Republicans running in the August 28th primary. They are incumbent Thad Altman and Matt Nye. The winner of that primary will be facing Democrat Sita Begui in the November general election. Each candidate tonight will have 1 minute to answer my questions, as well as 1 minute for their opening and closing statements. They also get a 30-second rebuttal if their opponents brings them up. A reminder, they will not get a rebuttal in their intro and closing remarks. Our forum series is sponsored by Florida Today, Eastern Florida State College, and the League of Women Voters of the Space Coast. So let's move on to our opening remarks. The first one to go is Republican incumbent Thad Altman. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. I'm Thad Altman, your present representative in District 52. I have a proven track record of conservative leadership. 24 years of representing the residents of Brevard County, either in the County Commission, the Florida House, and the Florida Senate. I think it's critical that we send somebody to Tallahassee that has the proven track record and the experience to be effective to represent our needs. The areas that I've been prominent in and spent a lot of my time, space program, where I was a Senate chairman of the Space Committee for 6 years. Defense, my commensurate committee in space included defense. I've served on numerous education committees, including chairman of the Education Innovation Committee, and I've served on many of the key environmental committees as well. I was actually the sponsor in the House of one of the largest environmental legislations ever passed by the state of Florida. That was the Everglades Restoration bill, as well as the bill that spent hundreds of millions of dollars to help clean up runoff going into the Indian River Lagoon.
Thank you. We'll move on to Republican Matt Nye.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Matt Nye. I'm a resident of Suntree. Been there for about 9 years now. I'm running for this seat because I'm tired of seeing career politicians take advantage of the system and the taxpayers for their own personal gain. Representative Altman has been in office in some shape or form off and on for the last 34 years. He's currently the beneficiary of a taxpayer-funded job that pays him $169,000 per year from the Astronaut Memorial nonprofit organization, in addition to retirement benefits. I've done a public records request on his calendars, and I can tell you there's not a lot of activity on his work calendar, and I'm just very tired of seeing that type of abuse take place, and I'm running to go to Tallahassee as a citizen watchdog and try to clean that sort of thing up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is Democrat Sita Begui.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to Florida Today and Florida Eastern College. And thank you to all of you for showing up today to hear this forum. My name is Sita Begui, and I am a mom, I'm a nurse, I'm an activist, I'm an author, and I have 4 children that went to Brevard Public Schools right here in Brevard County, Florida. My children also went to public universities in the state of Florida. I decided to throw my hat in the ring and run for state representative in District 52 after I saw 17 children murdered at Stoneman Douglas Marjorie High School. Stoneman Douglas Marjorie High School. I decided that I wanted to be a voice for teachers, for public education, and for our children. And so I decided that one of us need to go to Tallahassee and stop looking at TV and getting upset, but go there and become an advocate and an activist, as well as do what it takes for children and for our community.
Thank you. We'll move on to our first question. Please give examples of bills or funding measures you would like to introduce if elected. Matt, you go first.
So in terms of bills that I would sponsor, I think I would be looking at, we just passed a record $88.7 billion budget. I would be looking at things to cut or tighten up as opposed to things to spend more money on. You've got a tremendous opportunity. Healthcare is 40% of the budget. Education is 21% of the budget. There are a lot of areas that currently the state uses what they call priority-based, or drawing a blank on the name, what we need to get to is what they call priority-based budgeting, where you review your priorities and prioritize appropriately. So I don't have a specific bill that I would be going into, from a spending perspective. I'm looking at ways to improve efficiencies and reduce the size and scope of government.
Sita, what bills would you introduce?
The first bill I would introduce is to raise the minimum wage. I'm a talker. I love talking to people, and I hear stories from people that make $9, $10 an hour, even less, and they have to raise a family on that. And I want to go to Tallahassee so that I could look all the legislators in the eye and say, tell me, how do you live on $10 an hour? How do you pay rent? How do you pay mortgage? How do you pay car insurance? How do you put gas in your car? How do you send your children to school? You can't. And so I think in order to do what I set out to do, which is represent the people and hear their issues and concerns, that I have to go to Tallahassee and I have to fight for them. And the only way to do that is to build a foundation for the family from the ground up by making sure people are paid a livable wage with benefits.
Thad?
First and foremost, some additional legislation to help protect the Indian River Lagoon and to restore it. We need to develop governance and procedures and laws to clean up the lagoon. So we have a lot of work still yet to do, such as shoreline restoration, additional dredging, ensuring that our agencies that are responsible for the lagoon are acting and giving them the tools to act. And then secondly, the space program. I've been deeply involved in a lot of the space incentives, and we still have a lot of work to do that. Again, with some governance issues, some tax incentives, and the ability to continue to fund the talent that we need to remain and become an even greater center of excellence for space flight.
Thank you. Let's move on to school security and the Marjorie Stoneman High School Public Safety Act, which was passed after the Parkland shooting and funded a Marshall program to train and arm some school employees. Do you support the program and why? Sita, you're going first.
I support having a school resource officer in every school. I do not support the Marshall Plan. I don't believe that teachers go into teaching so that they could carry a gun. I believe that we can find the funds in our budget to protect the most important resource, our children. And I believe that teachers, when given the opportunity to teach, they will. When police officers have the opportunity to take care of our public and our children, they will.
Thank you. Thad, you're next.
I support both those programs. I think it's important that we do everything we can possibly do to protect our children and give our teachers every tool that they feel comfortable using to protect our children. We have a lot of educators that have the ability to be a part of a marshalling program. We need to have our school resources officers armed. It needs to be done in a very responsible way, and it can be done. I've been married to a school teacher for 25 years. Who would tell a teacher if they're in lockdown and a shooter's entering their room that we're not going to allow you to protect your children or yourself? I don't understand that way of thinking. We need to work with our schools and give them every tool possible. That's a last resort, and hope it doesn't come to that. We need to prevent, but we need to cover all our bases. I strongly support that.
Matt?
I agree with Representative Altman. I think you need to have all of the tools in the toolbox at your disposal. I'm for the Guardian program. I'm for school resource officers. I quite frankly think if you have a concealed carry permit, you should be able to carry on campus. To me, it's, again, is just fascinating that we leave our most valuable resources, the children, completely disarmed. So again, best case, to me, the more people you have with concealed weapons that are properly trained, the better off you are. The problem with school resource officers, just as a single solution, I'm in the technology business. In the technology business, we work to eliminate what they call single points of failure. A school resource officer, one per school, is by definition a single point of failure, and you saw what happened in Parkland when that single point failed. So I am absolutely for deploying all possible solutions to that problem.
I want to ask you about the gun control provisions in the Marjorie Stoneman Act, which include a waiting period of 3 days for the purchase of a firearm, raising the age to buy a firearm from 18 to 21, and banning bump stocks. I want to know if you support those provisions or if you would like to repeal them and why. And Thad, you're going first.
I support those provisions. I think when we were building consensus and addressing the school safety, we wanted to be broad-based, and our children are being targeted. And one of the common themes that we saw in some of these shootings, they were all addressed in those three provisions. It doesn't mean that we might need to tweak some of them. For example, we do allow 18 to 20-year-olds to possess a firearm. They just can't purchase them. It could be that we could require additional background screening and training and perhaps give them the liberty to do that. And we already do that in some regards. If you're a police officer or a soldier, you can purchase a gun. So we might want to tweak that and address that somewhat. But for the most part, the general scheme, I support those provisions. I think they're measured. I think they're responsible. And I think they don't in any way infringe on the Second Amendment. As a matter of fact, I think the greatest threat to our Second Amendment, our right to own firearms, is to not do nothing, and we continue to see the carnage, and then you fear a backlash.
Matt?
And I believe that is why I have an A rating with the NRA, and Representative Altman now has a C. So I do not support any of those provisions. I do not like the way that bill was handled. I think the legislature should have taken the time to go to a special session. I don't think depriving 18 to 21-year-olds of their right to purchase a firearm will do anything at all to impact this phenomenon of these school shootings. And what we have to remember, everybody acted like there was this huge hurry, but these mass shootings in terms of more than 5 casualties in a Columbine-style event are very rare. There have only been 10 since Columbine in 1999, and they're obviously horrific and tragic when they happen, but the odds of somebody being killed in that type of school shooting are 1 in 641 million. So I think we could have taken the time to have a special session and craft some legislation that would have been much more substantive and better all around.
Representative Altman, you get 30 seconds for a rebuttal, if you would like.
Yes, we just could not kick the can. I mean, our children are targets, and there's been carnage in our schools. It took a bipartisan effort, and probably one of the greatest achievements I've seen the legislature achieve. When you were 2 weeks toward the end of budget, end of session, we're 2 weeks away from recess, we had built the budget, and in that short period of time, we turned things around and appropriated $400 million to school safety. I personally met with parents of victims of that shooting. We had to do something, and I'm very proud that the legislature did.
Thank you. Sita, your thoughts on the gun control provisions in the Marjorie Stoneman Act?
I support the state legislature with the Marjorie Stoneman Act. But when we talk about guns and we talk about control and we talk about reforms, we have to take into consideration, we all watched television and we were helpless when we saw what happened in Aurora. We saw what happened at the Pulse nightclub. We saw what happened in Las Vegas. And I would take it one step further and try to add on more mental health funding. But definitely, I think the legislature did a good thing, and I support the bill.
All right, so my next question is still on this topic. If you were to rewrite this bill that the legislature passed after Parkland, what would you do different, or what would you add to the bill? Matt, you're going first.
I think I would have made the Guardian program, the argument that I've heard from some of the reps that voted for this, were that they took the compromise with the gun control to get the Guardian program. The problem is they made the Guardian program an opt-in thing instead of an opt-out thing. And so what you're seeing right now, to my knowledge, there are only 2 counties, I think it's Polk and one other, that have actually put into place the Guardian program. So I would have come at it again. I think the Guardian program, the more people you have carrying concealed weapons, the better off you are. So I would have made that an opt-out, like that would have been a requirement for the schools, and they would have to vote to opt out of it.
Sita?
I think there's a time and place for everything, and I support the Second Amendment, and I support the people that want to carry guns. But I just think a school is not the place for it, except if you're a law enforcement officer. I think that we have to have people in Tallahassee that have common sense and will use their common sense when it comes to sensible gun reforms. So I wouldn't really add anything to it except, like I said before, I think we have to look at the entire approach and look at the mental health funding, as well as put additional social workers in our schools. I am totally for reforms that are sensible and for the citizens having their voice in Tallahassee through me.
Thank you. That?
Well, I was there. I voted for it. I didn't offer any amendments to it. I think the product, given the time we had, was an exemplary product. So I really would not second guess it. I can't really think of anything that I would change. But I do want to highlight one part of the bill that's overlooked that I think we need to focus on, and it will reflect the need to make changes or tweaks or improvements, and that's the special commission that we established to study what happened at Parkland and other school shootings, and to see what we could do to prevent that in the future and to make this bill better. Our own Desmond Blackburn, the former school superintendent for Brevard County, is on that commission. So I'm looking forward to getting their feedback and to see what we can do. That bill only passed by 2 votes in the Senate, and right down to the wire in the House, everyone thought it was going to die. It was a very, very tough bill, and it required cooperation, something you don't see a lot in government and legislative bodies anymore, where both parties came together and we worked together and did not have gridlock.
Thank you.
And we passed a very important bill.
So my next question is open-ended, but I want you to give me specific actions that you would take, if elected, to help the Indian River Lagoon. Sita?
Specific actions I would take. I think everything starts with education. And oftentimes, you know, you're riding in your car with your children and you see a garbage truck going by, waste management, and it says, think green, recycle. And I wonder how many parents actually take the time to teach their children what that means. So I would say we have to educate our public about what happens when a septic tank is leaking into the lagoon. What happens when you cut your grass and the clipping goes into the lagoon? What happens when you litter? When you're in your boat and you're riding around on the weekends and the next day your neighbor's picking up garbage? I think we need to look at it because not only does it affect our health, but it also affects our economy. So I would say education is the key to fixing the Indian River Lagoon. This didn't happen overnight. This took a long time to happen, and I think it would take a while to get all the muck out of the lagoon and educate our citizens about what we can do to make it more green, better.
So that is specific actions to help the lagoon.
Specific action, more money for dredging. The single greatest problem we have in the lagoon now is residual muck that's been building up for 60 years. From runoff, sewer treatment plant discharges, we must get that muck out. That's the most critical, the most rapid thing we could do to clean up the lagoon. Secondly, purchasing environmentally sensitive lands, that the development of those would have significant impacts toward the Indian River Lagoon. We need to preserve those lands that help filter water and keep the lagoon clean. Other measures, shoreline restoration, stronger laws related to runoff into the lagoon, hazardous waste. We need to look at our sewer discharges and requiring our cities and county to make sure that they fund the necessary sewage infrastructure, because we're seeing a lot of sewage discharges, 800 million gallons of sewage just recently in Titusville. Those are the things I can list in 30 seconds.
Matt, specific actions for the lagoon.
Sure. I think, first of all, you go with the low-hanging fruit and go after these municipalities when they dump raw sewage into the lagoon. You just had the incident in Titusville, close to 900,000 gallons. We've had numerous situations like that with Satellite Beach and some of the other municipalities. So I think the first thing is get the municipalities to upgrade their infrastructure, do what they're supposed to be doing, and take care of the infrastructure. Second thing, low-hanging fruit, doesn't cost anything. For these cities, you know, they have these canals that go to the lagoon. Those canals fill with the debris, and in order to clear that debris, they have to get permits from the St. Johns River Water Management District. You could pass legislation to give them open-ended permits so they can go in and clean that stuff out before it ever even gets to the lagoon. Simple, again, doesn't cost a penny. And then the last thing is, like in Melbourne Beach, you could look at putting them on a sewer system as opposed to the septic, because in an area like that, the septic tanks are very close to the lagoon, and that could take some of the pressure off too. So lots and lots of options, a multifaceted problem.
All right, it's sort of a related question. I believe Representative Altman brought up conservation, land conservation. Money for that purpose was set aside by voters in 2014 through Amendment 1. The legislature has used some of that money for other uses, such as operating expenses of state agencies, and that has actually caused a lawsuit brought by environmental groups. What is your position on how the legislature has allocated Amendment 1 dollars, and what would you do personally as a lawmaker regarding this issue? Thad, you're going first.
Well, I strongly support Florida Forever, and I strongly supported Amendment 1 that basically restored funding for Florida Forever. We lost funding for that program after we lost Governor Bush, and it is a very popular program, and the people voted by 72% to bring it back, and the legislature just ignored the will of the people. I have been a strong advocate for it. I have ran amendments on the floor trying to restore the funding, and we haven't been successful. I'm very pleased that a court just recently ruled in our favor, citing that we have not implemented the will of the people. I hope the Supreme Court does the same, and as a legislator, I'll be right there front and center making sure that we fully fund that valuable program.
Matt, on Amendment 1, has the legislature properly allocated those dollars, and how do you feel
Sure.
about
So, first thing is, anytime you have a trust fund or an amendment like this, I think you should spend the money, keep the money in the trust fund and spend it for what it's supposed to be, or spend it for what it was intended. What a lot of people may not realize is that between local, state, and federal government, 30% of the land in Florida is already owned by government. So I'm not sure we need more government ownership of land. Furthermore, when the state buys land, not only is there a purchase and acquisition cost, there is an ongoing maintenance cost. So if we're talking about how do we keep taxes low and set priorities, maintaining all of this land doesn't seem like a great idea. So a solution to that is use what they call conservation easements, where the owner actually maintains the land. The purpose is achieved because they're not allowed to develop the land, but the cost of maintaining it isn't on the state. It stays with the owner. So those are just some of my thoughts on Amendment 1.
Sita?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Okay, so money for land conservation was set aside by voters in 2014 through Amendment 1. The legislature has used some of that money for other purposes, such as operating expenses of state agencies. And like I mentioned, there's a lawsuit involving that, a lawsuit against the legislature. What is your position on how that money is being allocated right now? And what would you do personally as a lawmaker regarding this issue with Amendment 1?
Well, groups like the Sierra Club and Forever Florida, they're always working together so that we can keep Florida beautiful. We want to bring tourists here. We want Florida to look good, and we want to have open spaces where people can appreciate Florida. The misappropriation of funds is something I don't support, and I think we need to look at our environment, and not just when we talk about the Indian River Lagoon, but when we talk about land and conserving land. There's a reason why people want to conserve those lands. Usually it's something to do with maybe the habitat, what's happening with wildlife, what's happening with our rivers and lakes, lands surrounding that. And sometimes it's because we don't want people to build on those lands because there's an issue with what's going on, like exactly what's going on with the Indian River Lagoon. So I think we need to pay attention, and first thing I would do if I get to the state legislature, when I get there, is to make sure that funds are appropriated for what we said it was going to be appropriated for.
Thank you. And on a similar topic, I want to discuss septic tanks. Brevard has a plan to convert septic tanks to sewer in a lot of places, but Brevard, like many counties throughout Florida, doesn't have enough money to do that as fast as they wish. What do you think the legislature should do in terms of funding for septic tank conversions? And would you ever support a ban on septic tanks, such as the one in the Florida Keys right now? Matt, you're going first.
In regards to the ban, only it would depend on the distance, right? Again, so if it's Melbourne Beach or an area like that, possibly I could see supporting a ban, maybe. Again, the solution there is to go to a sewer type system. I'm sorry, what was the rest of the?
And in terms of how would you approach, do you support more funding from the state legislature for septic to sewer conversions?
I would, yes. I think that's an appropriate, again, infrastructure to change that type of thing. Again, it comes down to the distance. You know, I'm not sure septic tanks on the other side of the St. Johns River are an issue in regards to the lagoon. So,
thank you.
And I think let's go after the low-hanging fruit, the municipality. You know, going back to, again, return on investment and where is the most damage being done. Municipalities dumping millions of gallons of raw sewage into the lagoon. That's the priority in my eyes.
Sita, what should the legislature do regarding septic tanks, and would you support a ban in certain parts of the state?
I think the current moratorium that we have with septic tanks is fine, but I would support a slow process where we can convert septic tanks to sewer. Sometimes when we look at what's happening with our tax dollars, we have so much money to send overseas. We have money that we give to other countries, to other nations. We have so much money that we can give for wars, but we don't have enough money to convert our septic to our sewers. I find that's something that I would look into, and I would ask the federal government to come in and help the state as well. I don't think we can do all the septics, but I think it's something we should look forward to doing.
Thad?
A total ban could be detrimental because what septic tanks do in your rural areas, 1 unit to 5 acres or 1 unit to 10, it provides the ability to live without a lot of density. As a matter of fact, we've seen the negative impacts that public sewer systems can have on the lagoon with the spills, and they also drive very high dense development. So they play a role. The key is that they are done properly and they're properly maintained and are inspected. Certainly in high dense areas you shouldn't have septic tanks. The legislature did pass a bill that required inspections, required fees for those inspections, and required and developed a fund to improve and repair those broken septic tanks without the public having to pay. It was paid for that broader base fee. The public wasn't ready for that, and we repealed that. But I think those are the kind of programs that we need to go back to the drawing board. Technology will be another solution. I'll run out of time, but I think that plays a key role.
My next question is do you support abortion rights, and how will you ensure that low-income women receive information about all of their reproductive options? Sita?
I do. I support a woman's right to choose, and I support I think that at the appropriate age, we should be making sure that we have the information. Oftentimes, we see people make decisions for women, but I believe that our bodies and our reproductive rights is something that I personally, as a woman, I take personally, and I think I don't want to see anybody interfere with Roe versus Wade. I think that sex education at the appropriate age, as well as an academic and a trade and vocational, is great for women. But when it comes to abortion rights, I would say I don't want to be touching that.
Thad?
Well, I was very honored to co-sponsor House Bill 41, which funded crisis pregnancy centers. So women in one of the most difficult times of their life, trying to find the support to have a child, can get the support to bring a human life into the world. I think there's no greater thing anyone can do but to literally bring life into the world. I was shocked that we had opposition to that, but I strongly support for the right of us who believe that life begins at conception to advocate for that and to provide the resources to help women bring a life into the world. So I am pro-life. I believe that life begins at conceptions, and abortion should not happen unless there's severe situations, such as the life of the mother, incest. Those are the things that I think are the only exceptions to that.
Matt?
So I am pro-life. I do believe life begins at conception. The issue I have is that I don't see government interfering with a woman's health decisions. Again, if we're talking about the pregnancy being a risk to the actual woman's survival, that's where things get murky for me. So I don't see government having a role in that. In regards to making resources available to, I think you said low-income pregnant women. It sounds like that's already in place, and I would support it as it is.
Sure. Still on the topic of healthcare, if elected, would you plan to support legislation to obtain Medicaid expansion dollars for the state of Florida or anything similar to that as was proposed a couple of years ago? If not, how would you provide access to health care for low-income employees who do not qualify for health insurance under the Affordable Care Act? Thad, you're going first.
Well, I support bringing back our tax dollars to the state of Florida. And we pay a lot of taxes in terms of Medicaid and Medicare. And what the expansion of Medicaid eligibility does, it brings back our money. And it allows us to really help meet the healthcare crisis that we have in this state. So I support that. I support it, though, only if we spend those dollars in a wise way, having private providers, not allowing freeloaders, or those who are just simply gaming the system, but to require them to seek jobs or workforce training if they are receiving that Medicaid expansion. But this is our money. And to turn that dollar away, $54 billion we turned away, I think that's malfeasance. I think we need to bring those dollars back here so the people of Florida can get the health care they need.
Matt?
So I absolutely do not support the expansion of Medicaid. If you look at the industries that have the most issues, the ones that we have the most problem with, they are the most heavily regulated by government. So insurance, healthcare, all of the things that we're always talking about, the problems are created by government intervention into the marketplace. The solution is to get government out of it. We need to cut costs. We need to find ways to streamline efficiencies, cut costs with the Medicaid program. That's 40% of our state budget. We need to find ways to improve the business environment so that we don't have people that need the Medicaid in the first place. So if we improve access to health insurance, again, implement free market reforms, so allow the market to work so that people will have access to affordable insurance and health care. The keys are, again, transparency, competition, not more government handouts.
Sita, your thoughts on Medicaid expansion?
I support Medicaid expansion. We have people that can afford health insurance. Then we have people who have employer-sponsored insurance, and we have people who qualify for Medicaid. But then we have people that fall into the gap, and those are the people that I think we should expand Medicaid for. Unfortunately, not everyone can afford private insurance. I myself found myself in that situation recently when I decided to resign and stay home. And my insurance was about $800 a month for medical, dental, and vision. And so I went back to work as a nurse because I figured I'll just get my insurance at work. But I run into people every single day that the biggest issue is healthcare, in addition to education and the environment. And for those people, I tell them, if I am your voice when I get to Tallahassee, I would make sure that we can have a state that put people before profits, and that, yes, I will look out for healthcare for all. Healthcare is a right, it is not a privilege.
Thank you. When it comes to mental health funding, Florida ranks near the bottom among all 50 states. Do you support increased funding for mental health services? And please be specific on what kind of services you are referring to. If you support that. Matt, you're going first.
So I would say yes, there's clearly a need for more mental health funding. In terms of the specific types, I think you would be looking at increases in the number of beds in facilities like circles of care and things of that nature. There's clearly a cost to society when we have mentally ill people that are literally out on the street. I know I've been to shopping centers and other areas, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking to see the way some of these folks are living and are treated. And in some cases, they're veterans. So yes, absolutely, that's a gap that needs to be filled. Thank you.
Sita, your thoughts on mental health funding and what kind of programs would you fund?
I think mental health funding, it's a question that I can't answer it in a minute, but I will try. The foundation for family starts in the home. Unfortunately, we see nowadays, so many people don't feel good about themselves. we see so many people with self-esteem issues and bullying, and people use words that they should not be using, but of disrespect. They speak to others as though their life has no value. And unfortunately, these are all little things that contributes to how people feel about their mental health. I would say that we need to increase mental health funding, and we need to have more facilities, not just a facility where you can take someone if they're Baker acted, like circles of care. We need to have places that people are trained to take care of the mentally ill, and they should not be putting people in prison if something is wrong. Oftentimes, as a nurse, I have a lot of friends that work in the prison system, and we lock people up who have mental health problems. What we need is more beds in the community and more compassion. And when people say that they're pro-life and they're pro-family, prove it by passing legislation that helps these people as well.
Your time is up. Thad?
Well, I do agree. We do need to provide more funding in mental health. I think it's money well spent, and it will prevent a lot of tragedies, both personal and collective tragedies. And one of the things we did in the school safety bill that we passed, we put over $60 million into guidance counselor and mental health counseling in our schools. It was sort of ironic. I met with a group of Brevard County students, and they were lobbying the legislature on what they thought was most important in terms of a funding need in our schools. And it was mental health counseling, unequivocal, without question. Our kids know what's going on in our schools and our community. So I do support that, support it. And I hope we continue that, that trend that we set during the school safety bill.
Thank you. Let's move on to education now. I want you to name what are the biggest issues facing education in Florida today, and what would you propose in terms of fixing those issues? Sita, you're first.
I think when we pay our property taxes, I mean, of course I know, I would like to see my taxes go to public education. I feel like we take too much money out of public education and we put it in it's a misappropriation of funds. I would like to see teachers being paid what they're worth. I would like to see more benefits for teachers. I would also like to see more academic studies offered, more trade. I would like to see partnership with the community so that when our students leave high school, they're prepared to face the world, they're prepared to work. What do we want for our children? We all want a safe environment, we want a good education, we want good health care, and we want them to go out and be the best they can be and find a job with benefits. So I would say, let's just increase the funding for schools and treat teachers with respect. It's not about taking our tax dollars for public education and giving it to private schools or charter schools.
Thank you. Thad?
I think the first thing we need to do is to give our teachers more freedom. We're micromanaging our educational system. We need to restore that very special relationship between our teachers and our students. And we also need to restore that relationship between our teachers, students, and parents. We need to give parents more choices. We went a long way toward that this last session. We can do more. And finally, I think it's important that we look at the ability to provide the resources to our school system. There are funding backlogs, and we need to make sure that we not only have the educational curriculum, but the infrastructure in place. And we're going to have a lot of infrastructure challenges as our population grows and as we look at the retrofit program to make our schools safer. But those are the three things that I see are the greatest challenges in our schools.
Matt, biggest issues facing education and how to fix them.
Sure. So according to the National Assessment for Educational Progress, only 35% of Floridian 8th graders are reading proficiently. Only 29% perform proficiently in math. This is despite the fact that we're spending $21 billion of our $88.7 billion a year in educational funding. Those numbers are staggering to me that is considered acceptable. I can tell you that all of the teachers I know are very warm, caring people. They're very competent and they want their students to succeed. So I definitely don't think the teachers are the issue. The funding I don't think is an issue. We're at record levels. Funding of education has increased by 21% over the last 8 years. So I think the problem is systemic. It's the bureaucracy. The funding is not getting to the classroom. It's being absorbed in the bureaucracy. We've got the high stakes testing. Again, teachers aren't allowed to customize to teach to the individual. and we need to make sure the money gets to the classroom and not absorbed into the bureaucracy.
Thank you. And the legislature in recent years has passed laws that force school districts to share capital dollars with privately operated charter schools, and they give $200 million for charter schools to open up close to struggling public schools. Do you support such efforts, and explain why? Thad, you're going first.
I do. Charter schools offer choice by our parents. Every school, right now, without charter schools, parents, unless they have the resources, are forced to go to a specific school in their neighborhood, and that may not work for them. A charter school is an option. Also, charter schools saves our public schools a lot of money. The charter schools do not receive anywhere close to the amount of monies that our traditional public schools receive for funding. It requires innovation and the ability for that charter school to bring forth resources. So I support them. I think they're very important, not only for the students that attend our charter schools, but it's important for all students. I think it will make our educational system as a whole better. They must be managed properly. The public school system must have the ability to provide oversight. We must have accountability, but I think all in all, they're a very important part of the solution to quality education.
Matt, on charter schools?
So I agree with all of that. I think anything that increases choice for parents, that increases competition. Again, I'm for market-based approaches. I know that free public education is in the Florida Constitution, but I absolutely think that charter schools do an excellent job of providing a good education at a much lower cost than the public school system. And I think the data I was looking at the other day, our cost per pupil statewide is between $7,400 and $8,000, somewhere in that range. And I've seen figures for charter schools that are roughly a third of that, and their test scores are better. So I definitely think that charter schools are that's a valid piece of the puzzle. Anything that offers more choice is a good thing.
Sita?
I think there's pros and cons to everything, but I support public education. I think if we have money, we should be putting it into our public schools, paying our teachers more, making sure they have the benefits, and giving them the tools they need to produce the best quality students ever. I often hear people talk about underserved communities. I hear them talk about choice, and I hear them talk about competition. When a child leaves a charter school, they're going back into their own communities. So what do? We not only are we focusing on our public school, but we need to focus on our communities. Give parents the tools they need to produce children in school that are going to go out there and be the best they can be. And if the end goal is to find a job and contribute to society, yes, that's what we want. But I don't like sometimes when it's, people are saying, well, the charter schools are serving the underserved community. Find out why a community is underserved before you throw a child into a school that's not in their community. Because I think the community, the family, is where everything is. Some parents are working 2 jobs, and they can't be there to volunteer in their children's school. They can't be there to make the community school what it should be. So I see the Biggie as a taxpayer running for District 52. That's what I want to do, empower parents, teachers, and the communities.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question. Do you support the HOPE Scholarship Program, which allows car buyers to contribute their vehicle sales tax to fund private school scholarships for public school students who are bullied? And why or why not? Matt, you're going first.
Sure. I support any of the programs like that where there's the ability to direct, if you will, the proceeds to a particular group of individuals. Absolutely.
And why?
I just think it's, obviously it's a good thing. So there are I want to say there are other types. I'm drawing a blank on the names, but I know there are some other different programs in addition to that. So.
Sita?
I mean, it's a good idea in theory, but we already have the Bright Future Scholarship. We already have a merit-based scholarship. If a child is being bullied in public school, why don't we find out what's causing the bullying? I think, as a society, we've become a nation of sometimes bullies, where people use code words against people who are different, whether it's the LGBT community, whether it's an Indian like myself, whether it's somebody with different colors, skin, or religion. We have to get back to where we respect each other. And so, yes, it's a good idea, but at the same time, let's focus, why is somebody being bullied? Why is somebody showing up late to school? Why is a child not learning? Find out the environment in which that child lives and what we can do to make it better. I think society would benefit from all of us just maybe looking for different solutions. Maybe we need more social workers in our school. Find out what's happening and sit down with that child and the family and try to come up with a solution. Money does not fix everything. Sometimes you just have to sit down with someone and communicate and find out what's going on in their home and their community, and then you can find the answer to it.
Thad?
You know, I've personally met with parents who had a child that were bullied in a public school of their district, and I made effort after effort after effort to resolve the situation. And put yourself in that parent's position when they know their child, for whatever reason, is being targeted. And without a program like this bill that allows parents to get support to find another school, they're trapped. I think it's a wonderful piece of legislation, and I think it's going to help a lot of kids. Bullying takes many forms in today's world, through cyberbullying, bullying for a host of different reasons, just the way a child dresses or acts, and a lot of times because they're successful. A lot of highly academic children are bullied. So I think it is important that we give those parents the choice to get their children out of those horrible situations.
Thank you. Many counties and cities in Florida prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. Would you support a state law to address discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation? Why or why not? Sita?
Yes, I will support a law like that. I think everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think anytime you infringe upon that right for an individual, it's not a good thing for America. We're all Americans. This is the America that I wanted to come to. This is the America that I immigrated to, where everyone can dream and everyone should have the same opportunity, and no one should be discriminated against. You know, oftentimes I have to cradle patients when they're dying in hospice. And when they're leaving this planet, they don't ask you your gender. They don't ask you if you're gay. They don't ask you if you're straight. What they want you to do is they ask you, how am I leaving a better legacy behind for the people that I'm leaving behind? And oftentimes people discriminate against others for the wrong reasons. I think we all need to take a good look at ourselves and recognize at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we're all here on God's magnificent planet for one reason and one reason only. Find your purpose, and I believe that service to God is service to mankind.
Thank you. Thad, would you support a state law prohibiting discrimination against the LGBTQ community?
I think to a point. I think discrimination can be a very ugly thing, and everyone should have the right to pursue freedom and happiness in this great American system. But what we've seen in recent years is a desire to inflict some views that affect other people's rights. For example, the right of freedom of religion. There's efforts to require churches to hire individuals that have a lifestyle or a set of beliefs that are contrary to their religious beliefs. I think that's wrong. I think we need to prevent that. That's why I supported and co-sponsored the Freedom of Religion Act, was to protect our churches and faith-based schools from other organizations that people that have beliefs that are different. We need to respect those beliefs, but we also need to respect the faith-based community that may have different beliefs. So I think it has to be measured and balanced.
Matt?
No, I would not support that type of legislation. You know, Americans are supposed to be equal before the eyes of the law. That's why the statue of Lady Justice is blindfolded. I have relatives and friends that are gay. I know many of them have suffered over the years because of the intolerance of others. But having said that, I don't think you can create special classes of citizens when it comes to that type of thing. So I would not support, while I'm very sympathetic to some of the suffering I've witnessed, and you know, in a private setting, I would not tolerate it, but I don't see passing legislation to that effect.
And are you in favor of automatic restoration of felons' right to vote once their obligations have been satisfied? If not, what is your position in regards to this issue? Thad?
I would not support that for violent criminals. Would not support it for sexual predators, violence against children. I think there are cases where people have committed felonies and some smaller, less intense crimes that probably we need to look at in restoring some of those civil rights. So a blanket no, but I think we have, one, far too many felonies. We have alienated a big block of our population. A lot of youths do silly things, maybe at the wrong place at the wrong time, a nonviolent crime, and for the rest of their life they're labeled as a felon and can never vote or have certain types of employment. So I think we, again, need to take a measured approach and to look at those situations where it's justified, but there are cases where these individuals that have committed these horrendous crimes should never have those rights restored.
Matt?
I echo those sentiments almost exactly. So, yeah, in terms of nonviolent offenders, right now there is a process in place where you can petition to get your voting rights back. I guess the one on the ballot right now coming up is going to be to automatically make that an automatic type process. But yes, I do think, I don't think because somebody made a mistake, and again, if it's a nonviolent crime, or as Thad said, somebody's in the wrong place at the wrong time, that they can never vote again, or they have to really jump through hoops to do that. So yes, I would support, again, to if it's nonviolent, to restore voting rights.
Sita?
Can you repeat it? These guys go on so long that I forget the question.
Sure. Would you support restoring voting rights for felons who have fulfilled their obligations?
Of course.
Why and why not?
Yes, I do. Once you've paid your debt to society, of course, you should be allowed to get back. You should be able to get back in with your family, your children, get a job, be a part of functioning society. You know, we all complain about children who have no fathers. We complain about the family unit that's breaking down. So somebody made a mistake, but they paid their price to society. As long as the courts and the law is that the person is released, why not? I think this is a socioeconomic issue as well as a foundational family issue. People complain that they don't want to pay welfare and they don't want to pay for children and other people's children and they don't want to pay for health care for people. Well, guess what? If someone could come out of prison and have his rights restored and find a job and become a functioning part of society and take care of his family, I support it 100%.
Thank you. Lawmakers have unsuccessfully introduced bills in recent years that allow the open carry of firearms and guns on college campuses. Would you vote for any of these bills if they were reintroduced? Matt?
I would. So I'm for open carry. Again, all of the data indicates that the gun-free zones are the area where you have the issues with mass shootings and things like that, and in areas where you have concealed carry or even open carry, you have far less gun violence. So absolutely, I would vote for any of those bills.
I assume also on college campuses?
Correct.
Thank you. Sita?
No, I would not vote for it. I think certain places, you can have a gun, but I don't agree with it on college campuses, and I don't support open carry.
Okay. Thad?
I support open carry in certain public places, and we already allow that if you're fishing or hunting, but I would not support it in our college campuses.
Thank you. And what is your position regarding the availability of semi-automatic rifles, commonly referred to assault weapons, and large capacity magazine used for these weapons? Please explain your position on this topic. Sita, you're going first.
I think if somebody wanted to carry a semi-automatic or AR rifle that shoots 10, 15 rounds, maybe more, great, join the military. I am a nurse. I work in long-term care. I have the privilege of taking care of our precious seniors. And I have to tell you, at the end of life, or when people are in their last 10, 15 years, no one is thinking about guns and who's shooting who and who's on welfare and who's having a child and all these kind of things. People are thinking about human life and dignity and what we can do to make the life of people a better life. So I would say if people want to shoot somebody, you have the right with the Second Amendment to carry a gun, but to carry an AR rifle around in public, join the military.
Thank you. Thad, your thoughts on assault rifles?
Well, a semi-automatic rifle that represents many of the common hunting rifles. I oppose banning the semi-automatic rifles, and many of the rifles that are called assault weapons really are not much different than a regular hunting rifle. So I would not support a ban of those. There were numerous amendments during the school safety bill to address that. When you really look at the problems associated with that, you literally would have to ban almost all rifles, including a common shotgun that has more than one shell. So I don't think that's a responsible way of addressing the problem. There are other ways: better background checks, making sure that people who buy guns are qualified to have a gun. You know, I supported a bill that prohibited people with mental disorders from buying firearms. In this last school safety bill, we supported a bill that anyone who was dangerous to others or themselves could not have a firearm. So I think that there are other solutions.
Matt?
So in addition to what Representative Altman just said, I want to zero in on the high-capacity magazine thing. You know, a skilled shooter, first of all, a lot of these shootings are being done with handguns, and those do not have, you know, super high-capacity magazines. But a skilled shooter can eject a magazine and insert another one in a second, or in some cases less. And so the idea that this banning these high-capacity magazines is going to somehow reduce the lethality of these incidents, I think is just not true. You know, I definitely don't support any sort of ban on semi-automatic weapons for all the reasons that Thad stated. It's just we have a right to bear arms, and those are you know, very commonly used rifles for other purposes. So.
All right, so we're running out of time, so we're going to move on to our closing statements. I'm actually going to give you 45 seconds to do your closing statements and your final words to the voters. Sita, we're going to start with you. Your closing statement, 45 seconds.
If you want a person to represent you in Tallahassee that put value on human life, I'm your candidate. If you want a person who will represent you and take care of the environment, I'm your candidate. If you want a person who will be there for you for public education, I'm your person. If you want a person that will not go to Tallahassee and use code words and fear and hatred and fear-mongering, I'm your person. My name is Sita Begee, and I'm running as your representative for District 52 as a proud Democrat.
Matt?
So again, I'm running as a taxpayer watchdog. If elected, I will focus on prioritizing spending for things like infrastructure and cleaning up the Indian River Lagoon. I will not vote for things like red light cameras or Medicaid expansion or bigger government in general. I will take a hard line on corruption. I'll tackle campaign finance reform. So again, if you want a watchdog looking out for the citizens of District 52, I'm your guy. Thank you.
Thad, you're the last one.
Let me talk about what I do when I'm not in the legislature, especially since my opponents tried to cast dispersions. I work at the Kennedy Space Center. I'm the only member of the entire legislature who works at our Space Center. My employees, my bosses, my board of advisors represent some of the greatest heroes we've ever had. They've walked on the moon, flown hundreds of missions in Vietnam. They're family members of astronauts who've given their life. I have received sterling response to the job I've done. I've personally received awards from NASA for what we've done to educate future rocket scientists and astronauts. And we've actually saved the federal government and NASA $500,000 by bringing in private dollars to fund these programs. I don't get paid from a penny of taxpayers' funds, not a dime.
Thank you all for being here, and that's a wrap up for our Florida House District 52 Forum. We'll be back after the August 28th primary on September 12th, where we're going to meet more candidates running for the Florida House. And don't forget to vote on the 28th. My thanks again to Eastern Florida State College and the League of Women Voters. I will see you in September.